Thank you, Ian. Thanks to Ian, to Katrina, to the band. And Wednesday night, Katrina sang about 16 songs without any notes, one after another, and it was quite wonderful. And we had a wonderful celebration. Had a little over 100 people here, and it was continuing to help us celebrate the joy of Christmas. And so thank you for doing that, and I thank the band for it, and I thank the singers who were all excited and dressed up like reindeer, to celebrate Christmas. So as you probably know by now, we are talking about the wonder of joy during this holiday season. There was a young mother who was shopping during Christmas, going from store to store. And when she got to Saks Fifth Avenue, she recognized or became aware that her daughter's hand was no longer in her hand. So she stopped, of course, and then she became somewhat frantic, somewhat concerned, very concerned. And she started to retrace her steps, and down the street just a little bit, her daughter had her nose up against a window in a department store. And as her mother walked up, she said, "Mom, look here. Here's the picture. Here's Jesus in the manger right here in this department store. Isn't this exciting?" And her mother said, "Take my hand and come with me. We don't have time for that right now." Sometimes we forget what we're all about. Sometimes we get so wrapped up, if you would, in the season. In life itself, we forget about what we are doing and why we're here. Sometimes when we have to choose between an opportunity to grow in spirit, such as taking a class, or maybe about having a disciplined life of prayer and meditation, or finding a way to reach out, we think to ourselves and we say earnestly, "I just don't have time." And yet, I think most people want desperately to feel and experience the wonder of joy in their lives. But for some, it seems impossible, and it's not, but they feel that way. And so what they accept is happiness. And the difference between joy and happiness is that happiness is a feeling that comes and goes based on what's happening right now. If I feel good about what's happening, I'm happy. If I feel sad about what's happening, I'm not happy. Matter of fact, if I feel sad long enough, I can become depressed. I can become unhappy, as we say. I can become distraught. And even though that can happen to us, I want you to know as truth seekers that we can still, even under the circumstances of things not going what we call right, feel a sense of joy, experience joy and the wonder of joy in our lives. What we are seeking here is the kingdom of heaven. That's what the wonder of joy is. Not in some heavenly realm out there somewhere. You know, when I used to believe that, and I never knew quite what I believed, was it salvation by works, by faith? Which was it? And I had different ministers tell me different stories about it. How does it work? And then I spent time wondering whether or not I was going to hell or heaven. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem to me be an experience of great joy. As a matter of fact, it confuses us. It puts us in a state of not feeling worthy enough. And as I started to, I happen to think, evolve in my consciousness, I started to understand the idea of universal salvation. We're all saved. That we already are who we are. And that is children of God. We just have to wake up to it, become aware of it, and step into it. And as we do that, we start to have this sense of joy, and we start to understand this idea of living heaven on earth. Maya Angelou said the kingdom of heaven is an active, not passive state of mind which brings joy into our lives. Awakening to the Christ presence that abides in you is the faith, is the love, and the peace that brings us an abiding joy that is consistent and replaces the inconsistency of happiness. I don't give up happiness. I just go a little deeper. And I allow myself to be in that wonder of joy even when things aren't quite going the way I want them to. Because I have that faith, I have that love, and I'm at peace with myself. And as you and I follow the star of wisdom to Bethlehem, we renew our faith as we commit to finding joy in life. An abiding joy that literally transcends life's challenges. When we don't have joy in life, we're taking life too seriously. We just get too serious about it. And frankly, life is not that serious. It is for joy. It is to live abundantly. There's an author named John Randolph Price. Some of you may have heard of him. He is internationally known. He is an award-winning author of many books, and he is a New Thought minister who has spent well over 30 years looking into the mysteries of the ancient wisdom, and incorporating those findings and writing many of his books. One of those books is called Living a Life of Joy. And as I read that and read back over it this week, what I realized is that what he was defining to us is, how do I find joy in my life? A joy that is always there, that transcends everything that I am experiencing. And he said, first thing we have to do is understand who we are and our relationship with God. But then he said we have to understand, some degree, what God is. Now, we can't define it. He even said in the book, I can't define God, but I'll try. And this is what he said. God is the infinite, absolute, all-good creator, the sum total of all energies, forever one with all its creations, loving fully and expressing completely in every good way. You see, the truth about ourselves is that each and every person, including you, is God expressing as an individual being. Showing up as an individual being. Not as a personality, but in individuality. And as we become aware of this, as we work on this and start our path and say, I do have time to know God. I do have time to experience God. I do have time to experience loving myself. When we step into that, we then are able to have joy right from the beginning. You don't have to go looking for joy. You don't say, well, you know, when I get through all this, the next 50 years, I'll have joy. You can have it right now. Starting there, because you know you're on the right path. You know that what you're doing is finding the truth for you. And so our awareness of our potential is encompassed in our statement that we are spiritual beings having a spiritual experience in the human condition. And as we awaken to that, life takes on a new way of being. And he says the second key is that you seek the path of finding the truth of who and what you are. You begin the journey with joy when you do that, and you begin to understand and find the truth about life. Now, John Randolph, I want to say Scott, Price, said that life and spirit are one, unified as all and present at every moment. Life and spirit are one and the same. And life is infinite, unfolding joy with deep meaning and true purpose. We have to buy into that. We have to understand that life itself is the way that we show up determines how joyous we are. What we believe determines how deep our joy is and how much we believe it. And as we step into that, we find that life itself is where our joy comes from. Scripture reminds us. David said, let the hills sing for joy. Everlasting joy will be upon your heads, is what Isaiah said. You shall have joy and gladness, is what Jesus said in Luke. Jesus said also, my joy will be in you so that your joy will be full. Because Jesus understood that he and you and I and what he called the Father are one. We're not separate. We are truly one. And in being that oneness and knowing that oneness, we are filled with this joy. You know, the angels sang to the shepherds, we bring you glad tidings of great joy. And the Bhagavad Gita, got it out? I said it right the first service. It says this, when one understands the personality of Godhead, the reservoir of pleasure, he actually becomes transcendently blissful. Now let me put that in a little more English. The full nature of God is joy. And we are the enjoyers. How about that? Isn't that cool? Because you cannot understand that you are the full nature of God and not be joyous. It can't be done. No matter how hard you might try. And try we do sometimes. And then he said the third thing we have to do is begin to break the grip of the ego. And we talk about that quite a bit. We talk about the idea that sometimes we can be, and we are bigger, we're always bigger than our egos, but we forget. And when we break the grip of the ego, when we recognize that within us is the power to control and dissolve any issue that stands between ourselves and our joy, is when we start to understand life itself, when we understand ourselves. It's by loving ourselves unconditionally. That's one of the steps. Loving yourself unconditionally. How do you do that? Well, you step into God's love. You become the expression of that love. And you can't love everybody else and not love yourself if you feel that, if you experience that. Again, it's not possible. The truth is that you are created as love, in love, by love. And so, in that creation, you are love. And as we accept that of ourselves, as we understand that, then what happens is we are able to embrace any misperceptions of who and what we are. We are able to embrace what we call the shadow side. Now, the truth is there is no shadow side. We just think there is because we think something's wrong with us. And yet, when we say, hey, there's nothing wrong with me, then we can be authentic, we can be real, and we can be out there expressing God, even though it may not look like God to others. But we know within our hearts what we're expressing and how we express. And so, as we love ourselves unconditionally, remember we can embrace any misperceptions. And we use the power of mind action to affirm our true nature, that we are spiritual beings, and we can laugh with life, not at life. We can laugh at ourselves. For example, there was a fellow who owned a waterbed. And one morning he woke up and there was a puddle of water in the middle of his waterbed. And so he let some of the water out. And anybody who's owned a waterbed knows you can't get it all out. I don't care what you do hardly unless you just rip it apart. So what he did was he struggled to get it outside because he wanted to find the leak. And he lived on the crest of a hill. And the waterbed took on a life of its own and rolled down the hill into some bushes. And all of a sudden it had lots of holes in it, okay? So he said, well, okay, fine. I've been wanting to get a new mattress anyway, and what I'm going to do is make the best of this. And he went out and he bought a new box spring mattress. A king-size mattress. It was so comfortable. He put it in his room, in his bedroom, and he went to sleep that night. And the next morning he woke up, and there was a puddle of water in the middle of his mattress. You see, there was a leak coming from the bathroom up above. Had nothing to do with the waterbed. But he said, oh, what a blessing. And what a joy in my life to have the right kind of mattress again, okay? So just remember that no matter what's happening in our life, the story of the waterbed, and you'll have to laugh at life itself. The fourth thing is that we begin to live in the realm of isness, not duality. That life just is. And that as we accept that, we're okay not judging other people, other events, or ourselves. And that's the hardest one, is not to judge ourselves, especially, I think, for Unity folks. I mean, I know the truth. I know what I'm supposed to think, and yet I forgot. And oh, shame is me. That's not the way to do it, okay? It's I forgot, and because I remember, I feel the joy of the Lord flowing in and through every cell in my body. That's what we're talking about. It's okay to learn. It's okay to grow. It's okay to make mistakes. And it's okay to love ourselves through those mistakes. As we do that, we're able to be in alignment with the I am, with the Christ within, with the higher self. We are God expressing. And as we do, we express that unconditional love of God. Life is an I am. Thus, God is expressing through you and through me. When I know that, when I experience that, when I see that, that's when I feel the joy. Just like I said at the welcoming. I felt joy over the fact that we accept people, no matter their background, no matter their experience, no matter their pain, no matter their joy. Everybody is just accepted and is enfolded in this congregation because we do not judge, we love. We do not judge, we stand in joy. And as we do that, joy unfolds and becomes a part of who we are. You see, our relationships are more meaningful because we see the Christ in each person and become aware of our oneness. Now, there's the fifth part. When we are striving, when we are searching, when we are looking for the truth within ourselves, there's something that happens that is mystical in nature, that is mysterious in nature. We find purpose. We don't have to go out and look for it. We don't have to write a plan to figure it out. We just find purpose in being expressions of God, of being what we're supposed to be in the now moment, of sharing our love with others no matter what comes up. It's then that we stand, if you would, in purpose. It's then that we take on purpose as individuals. It's then that life becomes harmony and love and peace and joy. As the angel said to the shepherds, I bring you great tidings of joy. Live your joy, be your joy, and express your joy. Know God. Know life is for joy. Know that law of mind action can move you further along to the truth. Know also that as we live life, we find purpose. And as we do that, as we follow our path and experience the wonder of this joy this Christmas, I wish you a Merry Christmas and, more importantly, a joyous Christmas and New Year in 2017. I know it's not New Year's Eve, but I'm going to still say it, okay? Joy for the new year. Thank you so much.